See some more 33 power. Check this out. Look at the time I purchased this meal. I purchased this meal at 2:33, and they didn't deliver it for 20 minutes. So the manager gave me my money back, and I get a free meal next time when I show this receipt. And today is the Moorish, Masonic, and Wiccan New Year, called Imbolc. And I got a free meal thanks to number 33. I also spoke, it was funny because I spoke to a 32-degree Mason today, and I told him about my arrest situation. He laughed because he's like, you can go in there all you want, and you can say whatever you want, and you can talk that Moorish shit, and you can spit that Moorish game, but it doesn't matter because unless you know how to stand like a Mason in court, unless you know the passwords, because you got to say something, the judge says something back to you, and then you reply to it. He said if you don't know that, you better pray to God that they get possessed or it's rigged or whatever. And I said to him, well, it's courtroom 33. And he's like, that doesn't matter. But he was, I could tell he was human. He wasn't a djinn, and he, I mean, he's a pretty cool guy to talk to. It was nice to talk, esoteric with somebody, and it was nice to have somebody to talk to for once. And, but yeah, he didn't, I can tell that he doesn't have that upper, he doesn't have that higher degree. I asked him flat out, if you've ever, I asked him flat out if he ever had seen 33 everywhere. And he's like, no. I said, do you ever see 13 everywhere? And he said, no. And he also doesn't believe in draconians. He says that they're all thought forms, which could be true. I'm not like adamant about the existence of draconians, even though I've seen them on the astral. I mean, even if they are real, say if they're physical, right? Even if they are real in the physical, then they were still manifested by the David Icke people. So in other words, David Icke started the reptilian thing, and then that created a thought form, which created the existence of the draconians on the astral. And then the more people started thinking about draconians, the more physical they became. So they started out as like a astral draconian, and they became a physical draconian. And honestly, my best guess is that if draconians are a thought form, they're not a thought form from this cycle, meaning that they were probably a thought form from a prior simulation. And to be honest with you, I'm at the point where I believe that everything is both literal and metaphorical. For example, like, I was telling the 32-degree Mason guy this. I was like, look, Jesus is just a metaphor, but then later on you realize it's also literal, Yeshua. And then lead into gold is just a metaphor, but then later you realize it's literal. And then, so I can tell, basically by talking to certain people, you can tell if they're human, you can tell if they're jinn. And the reason why this guy wasn't a jinn, and the reason why he was human, is because I can tell he drinks a little too much, and I can tell he says, like, I was talking to him about the Super Bowl last night, and he started talking a bunch of stuff that didn't even happen in the Super Bowl. He was saying, oh, well, this happened and that happened. I'm like, that never happened, but I didn't say that to him. I just let him see, I just basically listened to him and see how full of crap he is. and I'm not saying he's full of crap, I'm just saying that, he's basically the old, the stereotypical old black guy that's like, oh, I was talking about the boxing match back in 1954 and Marvin Hagler versus Mike Tyson and blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like, just talking for the sake of talking, basically. And the other thing that makes him human is that he didn't really... When I brought up Michael Jackson, he didn't really... He said that Michael Jackson had zero connection to his higher mind. And because I brought it up in the context of I'm just like Michael Jackson in the sense that I can't sleep at night because I'm so divergent, and Michael Jackson and I are both Messiah seeds, and that Michael Jackson was going to go after the reptilian Phil Spector, and this 32-degree Mason guy was like, Michael Jackson had no connection to his higher mind, and blah, 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 and he was just a drug freak, and blah, 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 blah. And, I really don't buy that, because, first of all, how is this guy going to know that Michael Jackson had no connection to his higher mind unless he observed him? And how... I mean, it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like common sense, because Michael Jackson had the adoration of the profane, which gives you a shit ton of energy. When people worship you, that gives you a lot of energy, and so my seeing eye tells me that, he had the adoration of the profane, so he just, had all that energy to go astral travel all the time. And of course, he had money, and money gives you energy too. So, and then you have, Dr. Phil Valentine saying that, and then you had Cyrus King basically saying the same thing, that Michael had ascended and blah, 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 and basically, this 32-degree Mason guy I talked to was kind of implying that Michael Jackson would have to go on national television and start talking esoteric stuff. I'm like, dude, that's not going to happen. Like, he didn't say that exactly, but he was implying that the only way Michael Jackson could prove that he was connected to his higher mind was to write a song about esoteric stuff, and to write... I mean, he's not going to do... They're not going to allow that on TV or in, they're not going to allow that on television. They're not going to allow that on in music. They're not going to allow any of that crap. And I told this guy, I said, I love all you black people. I love you because all the knowledge comes from the Afrocentric crap with the Tajik Bay and the Moors and all that crap. And I told him basically, if you want knowledge, you have to go seek out the black people. And yeah, it was nice talking to somebody, finally. And I asked him, I said, did you become a sovereign, or did you get like a tax-free earned income number? And he's like, no, because that's all that, he's like, that's all like the hypothetical theory stuff that, well, this is coming from his mouth, not mine. He's saying all that stuff is, for people who put in a lot, and you can't just get that without putting in a lot of effort, and you get out of masonry what you put in, and he's saying that's something that you just don't fill out paperwork. And granted, if you knew what you were doing, you could do it yourself, but if you do it, if you want to go the path of least resistance, it's going to be like a Gilbert thing where Gilbert puts in a lot of work for the Masons, and they reward him with the tax-free stuff, and of course they give it to him after he's done working, and of course they give it to him after he's went to prison. So basically it's kind of like a joke with Gilbert. It's kind of like a joke because they gave him his sovereignty after he was done in prison. You know what I mean? So what's the point of being sovereign if you already went to prison and you don't even have a job? You know what I mean? It's like you're not paying taxes anymore, but you don't work anymore, so it's like pointless. And, yeah, so this guy didn't really see the significance of Courtroom 33. And, we were talking about gangs and stuff like that, and I was like, well, you know, about Polite, he didn't know who Polite was, and I was telling him about, how Tila Tequila, when she became a Southwest Cholo, she didn't have to get gang raped as the initiation. You know, most 9 times out of 10, the female initiation into a gang is, you know, they'd run a train on her. And Tila Tequila didn't have to do that because, of course, you know, the president of the gang and his wife are probably gray aliens just like Tila Tequila. And, you know, you have Polite, the Naga Serpent, as the vice president of the Crips, and he's obviously a Naga Serpent. So the guy, the 32-degree Mason guy I was talking to wasn't, like, privy to the fact that, you know, all the Jinn are running the gangs. And however, he did tell me that, you know, there's only one religion, which is Christianity, and that there's only 3 things that run a territory, which is the state, the mob, and religion, which is, you know, obvious. But when he said it, he was just giving me like the empirical Mason stuff, like the stuff that they're told specifically. So I think as a 32 degree, it's probably his job just to like falsify documents or something. He was an MK Ultra type, you know, the kind that are missing 2 years off their life. His time missing was from the military. So, and at first he thought I was a 33rd degree, not because of the hat, but because of, I showed him a picture of the Masonic Elders, and as soon as he looked at my phone, he said, "Oh, the Great Nine." And I said, "How'd you know that?" And he's like, "Well, I can't get into that." And you know what? Here was the interesting thing, is that as a 32, he's only a 32 degree Mason, right? But he knew, I said to him, "Do you recognize this Dugard?" And I threw up the Order of the Green Light Dugard. And he's like, "Yeah, I know, that's," and he was saying it like, you know, stop doing that, you know. He was like, "Yeah, I know what that is, you don't have to do that," you know. He was, and I also showed him like the 33rd degree Dugard, and he's like, yeah. So I find it kind of suspicious that he as a 32 degree would know the Dugard of Order of the Green Light. So apparently, I guess the Masonic Elders make their rounds to everybody. I don't know. It was just nice to have a intelligent conversation. And I keep saying it over and over again. The only people I meet in person that are Masons are black. It's like there's nobody else. I haven't seen a white Mason in person in this town ever. Not one white Mason in person. Every time I talk to somebody about anything, it's always a black guy. So